Hello CalBal people. So you tuned in to Swirls Bakes Mark 1 scones. There is a recipe available and hopefully you've had a look at it, but if not to worry, you can look at it afterwards. So the first thing we need to do is make sure you've got your oven on. The oven is at 190 degrees or 170 degrees fan, 375 Fahrenheit if that's what you do, or gas mark 5. Okay, so get that on first because you want that hot when you're ready to put the scones in the oven. So anything that comes out of the fridge, i.e. eggs, butter, milk, needs to stay in the fridge until the last moment possible, so it needs to be nice and cold, particularly the butter. So first thing I'm going to do is just to crack my eggs into the jug. There's a list of the important things that you need with the recipe. So crack eggs into jug. There we go. One piece of shell gone in. Of course, there will be a piece of shell gone in. I have washed my hands thoroughly. Two. There we are. And then I'm going to add popped it in there. Sink. I'm going to add 6 tablespoons of buttermilk. Now, if you can't get buttermilk, then you can just use ordinary milk, 3 so I don't forget. And you just need to put a good squeeze of lemon juice in, and that will get the acidity up and curdle. The other thing you can use is natural yogurt and thin it down a bit with some milk or some water. And we're going to mix this up so it's nice and airy, and that will give us some skyscraper scones. Okay, whoops. So I'm just going to do this with my trusty mixer. It's going to be a bit noisy for a bit. If you haven't got a mixer, a whisk will do. So get it nice and frothy. As I say, you can do it by hand, but this is for speed. Okay, let's just pop this over here. And my butter, which I've measured out, 175 grams of butter, and that's 1.5 sticks, I believe, for over the pond. And I've chopped that, as you can see, hopefully, into small lumps. Okay, so we're just going to pop this and this back in the fridge where it came from. Keep it cool. Okay. Fantastic. Right. So the next thing we need to do is wash our hands because we've been messing about with eggs. Get our hands washed. Safety at all times. Right, okay. So in my large bowl, I have already measured out 450 grams, or that's 3 2/3 of a cup of self-raising flour. I've added to that a teaspoon of baking powder. Now that's not always necessary, totally necessary. Sometimes I add it, sometimes I don't. It will give an extra lift, help them go skywards. But if you don't have baking powder, doesn't matter, self-raising flour has the raising agent in it. And I've also added my 2 large pinches of salt into this, and I'm just going to fluff around a bit with it to make sure it's all mixed in together. There we go. There we go. Don't need to sieve it, just do it with your fingers. I've also measured out 75 grams, and that is 1/3 of a cup of golden caster sugar, that's super fine sugar. And I'm ready to put a teaspoon of custard powder into that. Now that just makes it a little bit more fluffy, it makes the scones a little bit more fluffy, gives them a little bit more colour. However, if you don't have custard powder, don't worry, I don't always add it either, so that's just an option there. Right, now as you can see, I've got a little bit of buttermilk left over, and that's to do the brushing of the tops of the scones. So we won't get rid of that, we'll keep that to one side. Okay, right, butter. Here it is, these tiny little squares. So we pop that in, and we are going to rub this in with our fingertips until it resembles fine breadcrumbs. Now, use your fingertips as opposed to the palms of your hands, because they are usually colder. And we want to keep the butter as cold as possible for as long as possible, because that will help the rise again. If it's too soft to start off with, then it will amalgamate with the flour and be absorbed by the flour, and then your scones won't rise as much. So we rub this in. This is sort of quite a lengthy process, unless you're very lazy, and then you can pop it in the food processor and whiz it around and get it done. But this is when I listen to my music. It's quite a nice thing to do, because you have to make scones with love, otherwise they end up soulless. Okay, the other thing that you can do that I only found out this morning when I was looking through one of my new cookery books is that you can freeze the amount of butter that you want, and then from frozen you can use a box grater and grate it in, so much smaller pieces which will rub in much faster. Okay, now while I'm rubbing this in, we can probably take a little break and come back when it's all rubbed in.